On day 12, we continue our drawing journey with portraits. Portraits are the single most essential graphical element in your story. If you're not drawing anything else, just focus on the portraits of your characters. Our goal while drawing is the same as our goal as writing, is to generate attachment between the characters and the public. And for that, we'll have to balance two elements: familiarity and surprise. In order to do so, we need to keep our portraits clear, diverse, and synergic. Doing so will allow us to maximize the attachment with the public. Now, clear and diverse may look obvious, and as we give you the 8 following example, it may become even more clear. But what does synergistic mean? Synergy here refers to the complementarity between the roles of the character as it is retranscribed through the graphical element. So the drawings, the graphical elements, should allow the public to predict which character could have which function, which role, and which kind of affinity or of an alignment with other characters. The synergistic approach here is only this: you draw, and the information you give to the public through the drawing should give her a certain degree of predictability. Remember, predictability creates engagement. Let's start with the portraits envelope. The 8 examples provided here align both the concept of diversity and the concept of synergy. Now, how does it apply? You remark that the 8 silhouettes are, for most, undetailed. They're raw for now. These 8 examples are meant to be used as canvas. So if you still can't find satisfying references, if you still can't find faces or concept, or really you can use animals photos also and plant photos to generate more diverse character design. But if you still can't find human heads for references that you're satisfied with, you can start with these 8 concepts and start adding the details, as we'll show you in this video. The 2 models in red are the simplest one. You can almost only see the shape of the cranium and the mandible. So you can consider for now that these 2 heads are standard human heads, or standard humanoid heads. They're meant to be as simple as possible. These 2 heads can be used directly as canvas, and you can try to add a multiple combination of facial feature on them. You can try different kind of eyes, nose, cheekbones, lips, and ears on them, just without even thinking about the hair, the headdress, or the accessories. The 2 examples in green already have a hairstyle. And in the case of the character on the left, you may even ask yourself if this character has a hairstyle or if it is a headset. Note the confusion here between the fact that this character may be wearing a potential hat, or if the character has her hairstyle this way, is really not of your concern for now, because what matters is that you play with the general form of the head, with the general shape of the head, to create some visual interest. So what may look like curls or bubbles may be part of the head itself. It may be curly hair, or it may be a type of headdress. In the case of the 2 characters in blue, you may see already that some deformation of the head having operated. In the case of the character on the right, it's even more obvious. This character seems to have had its skull altered, and there seems to be deformation of the skull. You may realize that this character is the only one with only part of the face contour represented, whereas all the other characters have their full face contour represented. This is for a further part and the work on the light and the shadows, but let's introduce you to the concept right now. If you put some highlights on a part of the face, you create contrast on the face, and creating contrast allows you to highlight the features that you judge to be the most essential. For example, a highlight will often be put on the eyes. A highlight is easily created on the nose, and a highlight will be visible on something like half of the face, 2/3 of the face, 3/4 of the face. The lips are generally the element which are less used in terms of light management. The characters in purple are the ones with the most defined features. You can see that, for example, the character on the left has a different skull shape. Her skull is more developed than any other of these characters. The character on the right has a clear hair line and a clear hat line. The clear separation here between the hairstyle and the headset is deliberate. Note that we're dealing with the definite aspect here. It is the objective dimension of deforming a character. Whereas you may find that the two characters in green are more remarkable. This is more of a subjective matter. Now, what we're meaning here is that you have to compare at all time in all phases of your character creation or environment creation. The difference between the deformation of the rule here being the characters in red, and what makes the most effect on you, or what makes the most effect on a certain group of character and a part of your public. Now, you may consider that, for example, the character on the bottom right corner, character in green, since she has more detail on her face, is the most remarkable one. And you'd be right. That's a valid argument. This character is more remarkable than the other because she has more detail. So in a sense, we've broken a rule with her already. But the character on the right for the group, for the purple group, has broken another more essential rule here, and which is the separation of the different phases of the character, where in most cases we try to keep the silhouette as uniform as possible. There are three characters on which the contour of the face appears completely, and out of these three, the character in purple has 3 layers of complexity: her head, her hair, and her hat. Whereas for the characters in blue and in green, you only have the head and what may be either a veil or the hair of the character. So the layers of complexity are only 2, whereas for the character in purple, there's 3. Focus on that for the rest of the video, because now we're gonna present to you the detailed portraits of the character. If you want to create attachment with the public, or even attachment between 2 characters, you'll have to put a character inside this silhouette, inside this envelope. Now, you may realize that one of the most important points into creating a character is adding eyes. Now, all these characters have eyes, but they almost all have different kind of eyes. You can count 4 to 5 types here. Not all of them are completely different. You may also realize that we've started to add more details in the hair or in the headset. Remember, if you don't know which quirk choose for your character, because it may be difficult, and we'll have a lesson specifically on quirks later. But if you don't know which quirk add to your character, think about the hairstyle and the headset. Because it is the kind of quirk which will most dramatically affect the character's envelope, the character's silhouette, and change her perception. The skull shape, the skull form, is also a great way to modify the perception we can have on a character. For example, when you watch the two characters in red, the character in red which has only 2 eyes, and the character in purple which has 2 eyes as well, you realize quite fast that the shape of the skull of the red one is more familiar, whereas the skull shape of the purple one is, a little more alien. The 2 characters in red are still the simplest ones. Even the characters which have multiple eyes, or gems, or pearl, or, multiple colored object on its face, they're still 2 of the most simple characters. When you compare them both, you realize that these 2 characters have colored eyes, whose color are different from the rest of the character. The 2 characters are in red, and you want to play on the color complementarity to choose the eyes of these characters. If you decide, of course, that these are eyes, because for the character with 6 elements on his face, or her face, you have to realize that these 6 elements are not necessarily eyes. They are what you choose them to be in the future, in the advancement of your story. For example, this character, she may have 6 eyes on her face, or she may have 6 sensors on her face, or she may have 6 pearls on her face, which are not necessary to see, because this character does not need to see per se. She may have other senses more developed, which allow her to evolve in her environment easily, maybe more easily than a character which has a sense of sight. The character on the left, which is quite simpler, which is the simplest character out of the 8 presented here. As one aspect you may want to remember, this character is red, and her eyes are blue. If you want to put an empathy on a character's features, and most of the time it will be the eyes, if you want to put some emphasis on these character features, play with color complementarity. It's the easiest way. Here, red and blue. We see that this character has also a dot on her forehead, and this dot may look similar to the dots you have on the character she is facing. So maybe that's an element which indicates you a relationship between these 2 characters, which may or may not be developed later in the storyline. The 2 characters in green are more complex than the 2 characters in red, and mainly because of their hair. So let's consider their hair for now. The character on the left has curly hair or wavy hair, whereas the character on the right has straight hair. So that's the first opposition. The character on the left has olive eyes, whereas the character on the right has cyan eyes. The character on the left looks, more childish, whereas the character on the right looks more like a grown-up. So there may be a relationship between these 2 characters, a parenthood relationship, some kind of sisterhood, brotherhood relationship. They may be siblings. Notice that the two characters on the right, wherever it's the red group or the green group, may look more mature than the two characters on the left, wherever it is for the red group or the green group. So you may see a form of resonance here between these two groups of characters if they are part of, the same faction, or if they are part of two opposing factions. Notice that the character on the left has lots of pearls on her. She has pearls in her hair, she has pearls for her eyes maybe, and she has pearls around her neck in the form of a necklace. Whereas the character on the right does not bear any form of accessory, except for her eyes, maybe. You remark that the eyes of this character are cyan, or a tone of blue. They are not purple, they're not yellow, they're not a complementary color of what green could be. They're not red. No, a complementary color to green would have been red, or would have been red or purple eventually. Now, it has been chosen for her to have blue eyes, and the kind of blue which is quite close to green. Let's think about that for a moment. Here, you have a character whose eyes are different from the rest of her body, but not that much. Here, we have a character whose eyes are the color opposite to what her body is. So you must see that there are two levels of subtlety in the behavior. Maybe the character with the red dominant and the blue eyes only is more reactive than the character in green dominant, cyan eyes only. If we follow this up, you may realize that the character in blue on the left has an eye color that's slightly different from the rest of her body. Her dominant is blue, but her eyes are slightly turquoisey. And again, that may reveal a form of measure, a form of progressiveness in her behavior. Now, you may find the same dynamic here between the character on the left in the blue group and on the left in the green group, related to the character on the right in both of these groups. It may look like to you as the same elder-younger dynamic. And that's how we create a relationship between these groups as well, same as with the red group. Notice how the character which may be the younger always looks at the character which may be the elder one. The blue group is different from the other two groups that we've presented now. The group in red, or you may consider that what I'm about to say is wrong, but let's focus on just that statement for this episode. The group of character in red has regular features. Of course, the one on the right has dots on her face, but the wholeness of the skull has not been altered. There's just no nose. Also, consider that it could be a mask or a cagoule. The characters in green have hairs. They have hairs deployed. Now, the characters in blue, or at least the one on the right for sure, seems to have their skull deformed, transformed. This character on the right has multiple faces attached to her skull. No, 5 additional faces in fact. Note that each of these faces seem to have apparent eyes, except the faces in the middle. Now, for the relationship between the two characters in blue, the character in blue with a veil on her head may not look like her skull as transformed at all. Her face looks quite regular, but the face of the character on the right looks quite regular as well, except for the absence of eyes. So try to figure out, why does she wear a veil? Why does she wear what could be a large robe, in fact? What's under this hood? Why does the hood look so voluminous? Why does her skull, why does it looks like there could be another head under that hood? Because you can consider that she has just a lot of hair, but really, when you look at the character on the right, you have to consider another form of information. Under her hood may be her body transforming, turning to look more like the character on the right. Now for the last pair, and let's start with the differences. You may see here that the two characters presented do not seem to have a great difference in terms of age. So that doesn't look like there's an elder one or a younger one. Also, and that's the second main difference, contrary to all the other characters, even if the two characters in purple are closer, you see there's no gap between them, contrary to the three other pair. Even if these two characters are closer, they are looking in opposite directions. In the case of the two characters in red, they're looking directly at each other, both. In the case of the character in green, the elder character looks at the younger character, maybe to ensure that no harms come to her. In the case of the blue characters, the blue young looks at the blue old. Now you may also consider that since the elder one in blue has eyes everywhere, well, she can keep track of when the young one is going. She can monitor the young one more easily than in any other case because of all these pairs of eyes. So that's the main difference. So these two characters do not look like a parent and a child, or an older brother with a younger brother, older sister, younger sister. No, they may look more like a couple. Either it's a couple that has decided to be together, or maybe they're partners, maybe they're co-workers in an organization which hired them to maybe infiltrate a mine, maybe infiltrate a building. And now they are in this hostile situation in which they are literally having each other's back by watching in opposite directions. It may also be that the two characters don't enjoy each other. And these two scenarios are maybe complementary. Maybe they have to work together, so they have to ensure each other's survival, or otherwise they'll die. And they may have chosen to work together. So both are possible. Now, let's get closer to these two characters. The character on the right, as quoted precedently, has 3 layers of complexity appearing now. So she has her head, she has her hair, and she has her hat. The character on the left only has a skull apparent. Now this character has a face too, and this face is defined in detail, as well as a ear, which has a peculiar shape. But the two characters between them, there is an intrinsic contrast between them, since one of them has multiple accessories and the other seems to have none. And there's an outer contrast between this pair and the rest of the all other 3 pairs. Now, what do we see? What else do we see about these characters? Their eyes. Their eyes are emphasized on. No, just like the character in red with blue eyes, the character in green with cyan eyes, and the character in blue with turquoise eyes. The purple character on the left has indigo eyes, whereas the purple character on the right has white eyes, and more precisely a single white eyelash. Well, it's not a single, but her eyelashes are white. Now, what else is there to say about these two characters? Note how the two head shapes and subsequently the two head forms in this specific situation complement each other. You know, the hat seems to be made to be under the skull. The hair are flowing, so there's a lot of hair here. They're thick, very massive hair. While on the other side, there are none. Try to imagine the ears of the character with the hat. Does she have round ears? Does she have small ears? Does she have no ears at all? Whereas the ears of the character on the left are prominent. They're maybe the biggest ears you have, if you compare all of these characters. Note finally that these four pairs all evoke a different sensation. If the two characters in purple should evoke survival, again, if they're in a situation in which they have to protect each other or they want to protect each other, the characters in red do not evoke the same sensation. You may be inclined to see these two characters and think, well, they're curious, or they look curious. They're looking at each other in a way they're trying to get information on each other. So the two situation, the red situation and the purple situation, are quite symmetrical, whereas the situation in green and the situation in blue are asymmetrical. In the case of green, the character on the right, the elder character in green, is looking after the younger character in green, where the younger character in green may be even looking at the two characters in red and say, well, maybe I want to play with them. And the older character may say, well, okay, but beware, okay, and behave yourself. Same thing for the characters in blue. The elder character in blue, the character with multiple faces, may be monitoring the younger character's transformation, for example, while the younger character may be looking at what she may look like in the future. So all these pairs are meant to evoke you a different sensation, and you can reinforce that through the text, you can reinforce that through the dialogue, through the description, and through the interaction between the characters. But see how much you can do right off the bat, the first time you present the character, just with a portrait, and just think about comparing your portrait. You can even draw each portrait, one portrait every time the character appears, or one portrait just the first time the character appears. And at the end of your book, or in the middle of your book, while you presented all your characters, you put all the portraits together on 2 pages, facing each other, to allow the public to compare the portraits, to compare the sensation, to compare the relationships, to compare what each of the portraits evoke relative to the others, relative to her inner group, each colored group, and compared to all the other characters.